welcome to Uncle's channel. Thanks for watching today, and let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game. Today focus on a game called Double Dragon for the original Game Boy. Now I never played like a ton of Double Dragon growing up, but I have played Double Dragon 2 for this particular series, and it wasn't a true Double Dragon game. It was more of a Streets of Rage sprite swap. However, the first one for the Game Boy is definitely going to be more faithful to the arcade or the NES version, and it feels very much like the original Double Dragon. Now this particular game did get moved up in the queue a bit because some guy playing game 7016 requested I cover it sooner than later, so now it's moved up in the queue. If there's a game that you want to see me cover sooner than later, let me know the name of the game in the comments down below, and just like Double Dragon, I'll move it right on up. Now I like to start the videos up, link the box art for the game first, and the box art for Double Dragon here is exactly the same as the NES game, and I believe it's the same as the arcade as well. Let's take a look. No, evidently the arcade version is totally different from the Game Boy and the NES version when it comes to box art anyway, and so my mistake on that. But as we're looking at the Game Boy cover, we do have Jimmy and Billy right there on the cover with their weapons like the whip and the knife, getting ready to take out some street thugs down below, and we do have the logo for Double Dragon up at the top. I think it's a good cover, except for the fact that you do not get to play as Jimmy in the entire game. You only play as Billy in the Game Boy version, and the manual does try to give like a long background story of why Jimmy's not involved in this particular adventure, but it is very convoluted and it doesn't make sense, and we're going to get to that a little bit later on in the video. But as far as like the cover goes here, a little deceitful because there's no two-player action, there is no Jimmy, but it is still overall, you know, classic Double Dragon. You know what you're getting into because you're buying this game for the gameplay, and this tells you right away it's a beat 'em up game. Now when you load the game up here, you do have the tile screen up top, the logo for the game, and the classic Double Dragon theme song playing in the background. I did not realize this was like the classic Double Dragon theme song until I was playing this, and I was like, hey, that's the exact same song in Double Dragon 2, just a little bit tonal difference. It's a great song. It sounds like you're getting ready to play a really exciting Mega Man game. I'll let a little bit of it play right here, just simply because I do enjoy the song so much. Like I said, it's a great sounding song, an iconic opening track for Double Dragon, and the fact that it sounds like a Mega Man song is just sort of the icing on top for me anyway. Now there are two game modes that you can choose from. There's Game Mode A, which is one player, your main campaign to go through in order to get the credits to roll, and there's Game Mode B, which is like a tournament fighter, and it requires a link cable to go through this. It is the only way, if you want to see Jimmy in the game, this is the only way to see Jimmy. Not part of the main story, but there's a little side tournament fighter mode, and you do have to have a link cable for that. But like I said, our main focus is going to be the campaign for the story mode, and that's going to be Game Mode A. Now when you start the actual game up here, the first level is called City Slums, and we do get like a little background story. We have our girlfriend Marion, who's being kidnapped and taken away by the Black Warriors, and Billy's job is basically try to fight through all these thugs in order to find their hideout and rescue his girlfriend from their leader, who is a Machine Gun Willie. And so that is our main overarching story for the game. We're going to get to the Jimmy part a little bit later, but Jimmy is somewhat involved in that when it comes to the manual. Now since this is a Game Boy game, there are only two action buttons on the controller. A button is going to be punch, B is going to be kick, and if you press them together, it has like a little jump kick here. But if you look in the manual, it says there are 9 different attacks that you can do, and this is somewhat deceitful because these are technically your combos inside the game, and really you only do those by if you press A, you hit the enemy, it sort of bends down. If you press A again, it does like an uppercut, and that counts as 2 different attacks, even though it's just really pressing the A button one time after the other, and there's no difference in damage, there's no difference in distance, nothing like that. It's just simply a different attack animation depending on what your enemy is doing at the time. However, I will say by including all these different attack animations and whatnot between your kick and your jump jump kick here, it really does allow for a more dynamic looking fighting style, and so the game looks great, the fighting looks great. But don't let the manual deceive you and think you have 9 different attacks that you can do, because really when it boils down to it, you are fairly limited on your attacks. Now as far as like the graphics go, the graphics in the background, the foreground for the city slums look fantastic. The buildings, the little cityscape along the horizon there, all looks really wonderful here. As you're going through it, you are going to encounter pretty much every enemy in the game at the first level, except for I think one individual fella here. And the enemies in the manual all have names here. You have this shaggy-haired punk. His name is William, and he always carries a bat, or often carries a bat. And if you take him out, you can pick the bat up, and then you can use that as your main weapon. You have these ninja warriors named Linda, and they have whips inside the game. And once again, if you take them out, you can pick the whip up. You can also use the whip in the game. You also have the lumbering Lopars that come along carrying these giant barrels above their heads, or these rocks. They try to toss those at you, try to damage you. Very easy to dodge for the most part, and you can also pick up those items and toss them back at them. They are lumbering, so they are fairly slow. And eventually, as you're going through the city slum here, you come across a factory. You go into the factory. It's like a box factory of sorts. Enemies are exactly the same, except the lumbering Lopars are now carrying boxes above their heads. They can toss the box at you, and you can pick the box up and toss it right back at them. A fun little boxing game. But eventually you do get to the final boss of the area. His name is Abobo. He's a giant muscle man here. On the Game Boy, his head looks really, really weird. In the manual, not so much. But in the Game Boy, it reminds me a lot of that meme troll face, I think is what it's called. I'll put an image of it here for comparison. But not the best looking graphics for Abobo here. And not a very threatening name either. Abobo sounds more like he's going to be a cuddly little bear or something coming at you. But anyway, he is definitely the hardest boss thus far in the game, or the hardest enemy thus far in the game, because he can pick you up and he can do like multiple hits on you at once. He can really zap your life pretty fast, but it takes like 3 or 4 knockdown combos in order to take him out, and then you have finished up level 1. Now level 2 is going to be the industrial area, and it's going to change the gameplay a little bit here, because instead of being like the sort of 2.5D beat 'em up, now it's just going to be a 2D beat 'em up platforming game. And so as you're going through here, you do have to have some very careful jumps, pressing A and B together in order to jump over like little gaps and whatnot. And the jumping mechanic is not the greatest, but you do get used to it as the game progresses. I'd say the most memorable part of this particular level here is at one point, I thought I killed all the enemies on a little platform, and so I began to climb the ladder off to the right, and I'm about halfway up the ladder, and then all these Lindas come out the door here, and I'm like, great, now I'm stuck on the ladder because I can't advance until I take the Lindas out. But if I come down the ladder, the Lindas are going to have the first hit, and they can knock me off the ledge to the right, and I have to end up taking just sort of the bite the bullet, come down the ladder, get knocked off the ledge, and lose a life there. And so an odd part to be memorable, but it really did stick with me because I was like, great, now I'm just stuck. But eventually you get to the top platform of the industrial area here. You go against the second boss inside the game. His name is Chintai, if I'm saying that correctly, and he is way easier than Abobo. They really should have swapped these two bosses inside the game with their respective levels here, because he is the same size as you, really doesn't have that many more moves than you have, and he is just simply way easier to take out than Abobo. He will appear later on in the game as well, and there's going to be like multiple of them at the same time. In that instance, he's pretty tough. But when it's just one of him, he's not too bad here, and you do finish off level 2. Now level 3 is going to be the forest, and this is the best looking level inside the game, because I'm all about a nature scene here, and you have this beautiful forest behind you. You eventually get to like a little lumber park, and you get to climb up like a little cliff. A really good looking level. There is one part where there's a awkward William hiding up in the tree here, getting ready to drop down on you and try to attack you, as if you don't see William hiding up there. And it's the only time the game does it. It's not like a common placement of William. He's only in this one tree on this one instance for this one surprise attack. And it's like they did all that animation to only use it once. It feels like they could have put a few more Williams up in the tree as you journey along. But regardless, William's there. He drops down. You can take him out. There's one part we have to jump across these broken bridges here. Like I said earlier, the jump mechanics is fairly awkward. And to prove that, when Linda is coming after me, trying to also do the jump mechanics, look at this. Falls in the water just like I do so many times. So that proves even the NPCs have trouble with the jumping mechanics in this game. Now when you come to the cliff area here, you do have to fight another Abobo, but this time I choose not to fight him at all. I figure out a way to cheese this particular one here, and there's basically a little cutout for the cliff so you can fall off if you're not very careful, but Abobo can also fall off the cliff, and so if you sort of journey down to where the cliff sort of dips down a little bit, he gets stuck on the edge, and you can sort of just be just high enough up where you can punch him or kick him, and you can get him 30 times, knock him off the edge, and Abobo is taken out in no time. And so you don't have to really worry about this particular one. But as you're continuing along the cliff here, you eventually have to jump off, and there's like a little bridge down below, and it's full of the second boss inside the game, Chintai, and he's going to try to attack you. And like I said, if there's multiple of them, it is very, very difficult. At one point, they can drop a sword, and you have to be really careful about this, because like if the sword is by itself, you can pick it up, easy to use, going to clear him out in no time. But if like he's close to you in the sword, do not try to pick it up, because your pickup button is the same as your punch button, and it's going to delay you from punching. They're going to get the first hit in, and you're going to get stuck in a corner, and it's pretty much a disaster from that point on. And so my best advice in the game really is to avoid all the weapon pickups, because you're going to delay your attack button, and you're going to take a chance of getting hit yourself. And so I went through the majority of the game just simply avoiding the weapons, because I figured I could do so much better without them. But, you know, to each of their own as far as strategy. Now, from the bridge, you do have to climb the mountain a second time, and when we get to the top the second time, you do have to fight another Abobo up here. And for this one, there is no like cheese method you can use. My best strategy was sort of do like the diagonal attack, like get him to sort of come walking down the screen. You're just diagonal to the right or to the left him a little bit, and allows you to get the attacks in while he cannot attack you because he's punching above your head a little bit. That's my best advice on him. He's still a lot tougher on this instance because by the time you get to him, you've already gone through a great deal of the level, and if you die, you have to start the entire level over again. There are no like mid-level checkpoints in the game, but when you finish him off, you do head off to level 4, which is the hideout inside the game, and this is gonna be your most varied level throughout the entire time. Now you start off in like a cave here. You have like little stalactites falling from the ceiling. You have to avoid those. They are very easy to avoid. They always follow the exact same pattern. They're only on the far right side of the screen. I would actually say it might be a challenge to get hit by them. I would actually go as far as to say you have to purposely get underneath them in order to be hit. They are that easy to avoid. There are also tumbling rocks coming down to try to avoid. You can jump over them or sort of hang off to the left-hand side under like the little overheads here. There's also going to be lava pits that you have to jump over, like little moving platforms on the lava pits. A lot of platforming in this particular level, but none of them are as hard as when you finally get to the end of the platforming and you have to fight another Abobo. Evidently, they really loved Abobo here. But this Abobo, the platforms behind you are disappearing, and you have to get behind the Abobo in order to attack him. And when you attack him, he can fall off the edge. But it is very, very difficult to ever get behind this particular Abobo. And so as you're going through it, like I probably took 20 tries to finally get to this one particular spot. This is the hardest spot in the entire game because it is so difficult to get behind him, and he can grab you almost any instance as you're trying to do that, and he just throw you off the edge as you're trying to knock him off. I hated this particular spot in the game, and I would say if there was one like moment in the game that like separates the majority of players from ever finishing it, this is that moment inside the game. But that's not to say the rest of the game is a walk in the park here, because the next area, when you're inside the overall hideout, has these giant skull doors, and if they open up, they're like a vacuum here. They're trying to pull you into the door, and there's these spikes inside the doors, and that would be difficult enough on its own, but there's all these enemies trying to approach you. You have to kill the enemies off and not also be sucked inside the door, and then they try to finish it off here by throwing another Abobo out there into the same arena, and I did figure out the best way to do it again is to try to cheese him here, get him down to the bottom of the screen, that same little platforms where he can't seem to go over it, and get your knocks in that way. This is a very, very difficult area, but nowhere near as difficult as the last Abobo that we fought here. Honestly, at this point, I'm just trying to figure out like how many times I've said the word Abobo in this particular video, because I have never heard that word, seen that name, or used it before in my entire life, and it feels like I have said it like 100 times in the video thus far. I'll try to put a little Abobo counter up here for the rest of the Abobos in the video. But anyway, once you've taken out that Abobo, add a number up there, you didn't go onto another area here, which is very odd. It's like a giant chest of drawers, and the drawers are going to come out and try to knock you off the ledge here. The only time this appears in the game, it feels more like something that belonged like a Prince of Persia game, but these drawers are coming out, they're trying to knock you off, and if you finally get past them, I figured out the best way to do it is just do a mass rush, because there seems to be no pattern to the drawers. Like you can't predict it and try to time it just right, just simply run past it as fast as you can and just hope for the best. But you do get to the final boss in the game over here, and his name is going to be Machine Gun Willie. Now, obviously, a guy like Machine Gun Willie is going to have a machine gun, and I tried to do like a similar strategy, like getting down like a diagonal to him a little bit, because this is a strategy I use for a lot of beat 'em ups. I use it for like the Turtle beat 'em up games. I used it for the other Double Dragon beat 'em up game. It's a common strategy in beat 'em up games, but it didn't really work great against Machine Gun Willie. But eventually you can get him stuck in the upper left-hand corner up here, and you can sort of cheese him that way. He's stuck in that corner. You can just sort of keep attacking him. He can't shoot you from that particular spot. Take him out in no time. And once you take him out, you do rescue your girlfriend, Marion, and there's a little picture up here of the two of you, and the credits do begin to roll. Now, in the manual of the game, it said the final enemy is actually going to be your brother Jimmy, who is like the ultimate evil villain or the organizer of the Black Warriors, who's like the boss of Machine Gun Willie. Now, they said that in the manual. They said on the back of the box. However, Jimmy is nowhere to be seen. And so I have no idea why to add that extra little storyline fact in there, because that is 100% not the storyline in the game. And as far as I know, like Jimmy's always your friend. He's your partner going through trying to take out all of these enemies. It doesn't make any sense to do like a, I don't know, a evil swap of Jimmy inside the game. But according to the manual, you were supposed to fight Jimmy at the close here. But let's talk about the game as an overall here, because for the most part, I really did enjoy my time with this game. Even though I poked fun at it a few times throughout the review, because there are some funny aspects to it. I do feel like it's one of the better beat 'em up games on the system. The action is very consistent throughout. I love all the little animations you get for your character. Yes, the combos are not as complex as the manual made them out to be, but at least the overall appeal of the game, you know, as far as like variations with your attacks, that is enjoyable. It's not very samey in that aspect. The enemies, on the other hand, are very samey. Like, there's really only 2 bosses in the entire game, or I guess literally if you count the Machine Gun Willie. And so variation in the bosses is somewhat lacking, variation in enemies somewhat lacking, but just simply the overall fun of the combat. The game's only like 30-40 minutes long. It's a really fun game to go through. When I finished it up, I was ready to start it up again and just simply play through the entire thing. I don't think it's as strong as Double Dragon 2 on the Game Boy, but I still think it's a really strong entry for the overall system. I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10, and I would recommend, if you're a fan of beat 'em ups, this is a game that you would enjoy. I'm still confused about the Jimmy part. If you know about the Jimmy part, let me know in the comments down below, because to me, it just simply made 0 sense. But if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above, and go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.